The man at the bus stop. Bad things come in threes, they say. I think it's true. Last month, I had to put my dog down. Buzzo got infected by some unknown bacteria while running in the city park. Though my vet tried her best to save him, but sometimes doing everything you can isn't enough. I cried a lot after burying him in our local cemetery. A week after this, I caught my boyfriend cheating on me. Our 4 years relationship ended in 1 minute. Then, when I thought things can't get any worse, I got fired from my job. I shut myself in my room and didn't go out for 2 weeks. The only thing that gave me the strength to get back up again was my art collection. It was the only thing that accompanied me through the difficult times. I spent most of my time looking and curating my collections. Soon, I managed to find a new job, albeit it was located very far from my home. It was a 30-minute bus ride and then a 20-minute walk to my apartment. That was pretty much the only downside. Because the bus ride was very boring and only a handful of people took the bus at such late hours. So, every day while leaving office, I prayed to God to get me home safely. It's scary walking home alone at night. Probably even more so for women. I often worked overtime, and by the time I got off the bus, it would be around 9 p.m. 20 or so more minutes of walking meant that I would get home near 9:30 p.m. In December, when it got dark by 5 p.m., it was pretty dangerous. I always walked as fast as I could and held my keys between my knuckles. The other hand was always in my coat pocket, ready to grab the pepper spray. For a couple of weeks, nothing ever happened until last night. Last night everything was different. I worked later than usual, so by the time I went to the bus stop, it was 8:30 already. The stranded bus stop stood on the street like a forgotten memory. The last bus comes at 9, so I realized I have to wait for half an hour. I shivered and scrunched up my shoulders. It was minus 15 degrees and I couldn't wait to get home and snuggle underneath my covers. My face was starting to get numb due to the cold. I kept my bag on the bench to light up a smoke. I have recently started smoking again. As I clicked my lighter and the yellow flame flashed up, my eyes went to the other side of the road. A guy was standing there, looking directly at me. His clothes were unclean, covered in patches of dirt. His blonde hair had a grayish tint as a result of seldom bathing. The skin of his face was in bad condition too. There were scratched wounds and pimples all over his cheeks and forehead. In one word, he looked like a homeless person with a serious drug problem. After staring at me for a few seconds, the guy started to slowly walk in my direction. I didn't flinch or reacted to this. I let out the first drag of my cigarette and just kept my other hand inside my pocket, grabbing the pepper spray tightly. He crossed the road and came to the bus stop. Not getting any reaction from me, he tried to act cool. He kicked a pebble on the street and then looked at me again. I could feel his eyes on me. But before he could walk up to me, bright headlights appeared from the distance. I looked up at the sky and thanked God for making the bus arrive earlier that night. Without wasting a single second, I threw away my half-burned cigarette and grabbing my bag got on the bus. But unfortunately, the man didn't leave me alone. He got on the bus too. There were 4-5 people on the bus. I sat down on a window seat and the man stood near the gate. As our eyes met, he grinned ear to ear, showing his grimy yellow teeth with stains of tobacco or God knows what. I realized he is planning to get off at my stop so that he can do whatever came to his mind when he saw me at that bus stop. But as haven't done or said anything disrespectful, so I couldn't take any actions against him yet. When my stop came, I got up to walk past past him. I was waiting for him to do or say anything weird so that I can scream and tell the other passengers about him. But to my surprise, he moved out of my way like a gentleman so that I can get off the bus without any trouble. I got down and as expected he did the same too. I once again grabbed the pepper spray tightly because I knew now, he is going to follow me home. I turned around. And there he was following me like a night owl. His eyes glowed like a wolf. The sick smile remained on his face. He was walking at a slow pace. The sounds of his shoes crunching on the concrete ground increased my heartbeat. I started to walk faster. His footsteps quickened too. I gripped my keys tightly and looked back. He blew a kiss at me and called out to me, "Hey, baby, where you going?" I stopped and screamed, "Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops. The cops will take 10 minutes or more to come for your rescue. Whereas I can cover the distance between us in 5 seconds or less. Do you still think that's a good option?" Ha 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 ha. I started running. I knew he was going to follow me and I couldn't let him follow me home. Gasping for breath, I blindly turned into a smaller side street. The streetlights started flickering violently, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat. Shit. It was a dead end. I was trapped. I turned around and faced him. The streetlights stopped flickering and stayed on. As he walked closer to me, I saw his face more clearly. He had a bad odor like a goat. His blue eyes sparkled and he gazed at me hungrily. He smiled creepily and spat on his palm. Then wiped the saliva all over his face like he was applying sun cream. I slowly put the keys in my pocket and tightened my grip on the pepper spray. He walked closest to me and said in his cold, spine-chilling voice, "I told you it wouldn't take more than 5 seconds. So, what now, little birdie? Are you planning to fly away?" I took a step back and he let out a demonic laugh. Ah ha 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 ha. I loved the fear in your eyes. It will feel nice to tear your clothes apart and enjoy what's underneath. He grasped my shoulders and pulled me closer to him. Are you ready, my love? I took out the pepper spray aimed at his eyes. In a second, he fell on the floor screaming in excruciating pain and I let out a sigh of relief. Now, I can finish my business in peace. While he laid on the ground writhing in pain, I took out my last and final weapon. A blank syringe. I filled it with air and then pushed it on the exact spot around his neck which will make his heart collapse in no time. This is how I hunt my victims. It's easy and safe. Once his movements stopped forever, I took out his eyes. This is going to be an extraordinary addition to my collection. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I love collecting human body parts that remind me of an incident. Like his eyes will remind me of this night. I have prepared a jar full of chemical solutions. I keep his eyes in them. Right beside my boyfriend's heart. The clown head. It's been 20 years, yet the memory of this incident feels so fresh. I was 8 years old back then. I lived with my dad as my parents were going through a divorce. My dad worked as a nurse in the local hospital, so he had to pull off night shifts often. Whenever he had night shifts, I went to spend the night with my grandma who lived 2 blocks away from our house. But the night when this incident happened, my grandma was also out of town. It was a Saturday night and my dad and I was all set to go out for dinner when his phone rang. After talking for a brief moment, my dad told me he has to rush to the hospital as it's an emergency, but he will be back in an hour. He asked me if it would be okay to stay on my own for a while, which I gladly accepted. Being an 8-year-old, having the house to yourself felt quite thrilling. He got into his car and told me to lock the doors and watch TV until he comes back. I watched him drive away and then locked the door. It was my first time being home alone, so I felt like a king. I can do whatever I want now and there's no one to scold me. I drank a lot of juice, ate 3 scoops of ice cream, 2 big chocolate muffins without having to ask for permission. I then ran into my dad's office, which always fascinated me. I sat on his big armchair and started to go through the stuff lying on his table. He had a fountain of pain that often grabbed my attention. I started writing with it on his fresh white memo pads. After jeopardizing a few pages of the memo pad, I rolled them into a paper ball and aimed for the basket in the corner. 15 minutes went by doing all these stupid things when I remembered about the clown head. A patient of my dad gave him a big rubber clown head before passing away in a terrible accident. My dad couldn't say no to that man, so he brought it home. But he kept it away in the garage, and no matter how many times I asked for it, he never let me play with that. I have always been the weird kid who was never terrified of clowns. Instead, I liked them. I loved their goofy appearance. I came out of his office and walked to the garage. The house was so quiet that I could hear my every footstep creaking on the wooden floor. I entered the garage and turned on the lights. The clown head was about a foot tall, with no holes for eyes or nostrils. The clown face drawn on it can be creepy to some people, but not to me. As I already said, I had a fascination for clowns. I picked up the clown head and suddenly a stroke of cold wind brushed through my left shoulder. Holding the clown head, I turned back and saw nothing in that empty garage. The eyes of the clown were blue and his smile was too big to describe. As I held the clown head in my hands, a weird sensation took over my body. I began to hear a voice in my head. The voice was hush yet shrill. "Put IT on." "What? Is anyone here?" "SHHHHH. Just put IT on." Before I could realize I was talking to myself, my hands lifted my head and made me wear it. I can't explain the feeling when my head entered the clown head, but I still feel something hypnotized me. Something made me wear it using my own hands. I stood like a statue for a moment. The clown head was weird from the inside. A smell of rubber mixed with paint lingered inside the air of the clown head. As I snapped out from my state of trance, I realized I don't want to play with it anymore, hence decided to take it off. And that's when the nightmare began. I casually pulled the clown head, but it didn't come out. Thinking it might have got stuck, I grabbed the top of the head with my both hands and pulled it again. But the head didn't move an inch. Drops of sweat appeared on my forehead as I realized the air inside the head had started to warm up and there is no hole for ventilation in it. I couldn't see or hear anything and my breathing got heavy. Okay. It will come to off. I just have to pull it harder. I told myself to keep calm and not panic. I started pulling the head, but it wasn't coming off. I tried to slip my finger in to create a gap, but it was stuck around my neck too tightly. What the hell? I tried harder for a few more seconds and finally started to panic. The air inside the head was getting hotter with me panicking, and I started choking and gasping inside it. It was so damn easy to put on but feels completely impossible to take off. Tears rolled down my cheek in fear. I screamed, "Dad! Help me!" But then remembered I am the only one in this house. I couldn't make my way outside the garage, and it also didn't feel safe to walk with this head on. I feared, if I stumble down then I will get more injured. Slowly I started to suffocate. I grabbed it, pulled it, hit it with my small hands, but nothing helped. I screamed and felt even more terrified hearing them claw inside the clown head. There's no way my neighbors can hear me, which means if I don't take it out myself, I will die sometime. My ears turned red and I can feel my entire face burning. The situation was so claustrophobic that I peed my pants. I was suffering and crying. I prayed to God to get me out of this, and I will never look at it again. My paranoia reached such a level that I felt pressure in my neck and vomited at once. The juice, muffins, ice cream all came out from my mouth in their worst form possible and started to float inside the clown head, which was already running out of breathable air. The toxic smell of my vomit mixed with the rubbery smell of the clown head made me realize death is not far away. As I moved left to right in a panic, the vomit moved around my nose and ear, which resulted in me vomiting more and more. I couldn't stop myself even if I wanted to. Now I was choking in my vomit under the worst circumstances possible. My nostrils got blocked by the disgusting fluid and my ears felt numb. A shrill beep was going in my head that started to blur my vision. I understood if I don't do something quickly, I am not going to survive. I pulled and pulled, but the head was getting tighter around my neck. I was trying hard, but suddenly my hands slipped and I fell on the shelves at the garage wall. Trying to regain my balance, I fell on the floor at my back and the vomited fluid went behind my head, leaving my nose finally pop out. I was searching for something when my hand picked up a metal tool that had fallen from the shelf. It was a spanner. I placed the pointy arch right between my jaw and the clown head and started to put pressure on the head to come out. The spanner created a small gap and the gooey fluid started to drip from that gap. I kept still until the maximum fluid flowed away and some amount of air flowed in, giving me a scope to fight back. Once I regained my sanity, I grabbed the spanner real tight and said to myself that in the count of 3 I will put all my pressure so that the spanner pulls up the clown head. 1, 2, 3. As I did what I planned, a cracking sound took place with horrifying pain that made me scream. The clown head tore from that one corner due to the pressure, but my jaw broke as well. Smeared in blood, vomit and sweat, when I finally took the clown head off, I heard footsteps coming at me while screaming my name. Andrew! Andrew! Oh, my God! Andrew! I woke up in the hospital 2 days later. Doctors had to clip my left jaw back, followed by a 7-hour surgery. There was nothing to do, no one to blame, as it was an accident that happened to a stupid kid who did a stupid thing while being home alone. Luckily, my broken jaw got better with time, and I don't have difficulty talking or eating, as steel plates are attached inside my mouth to support my facial structure. The only thing that bothers me is my scar. I have this huge scar on my left cheek. It forms into a disturbing smile whenever I stretch my lips. I have lost my face forever. Now, there is an invisible clown head resting on me for the rest of my life. The man in the woods. This happened last month and I'm still in shock. My boyfriend and I went hiking in Alabama. We both are avid campers and organized many camping trips so far. But it was our special tour, so we chose a high range surrounded by deep green woods. Alex is very sporty and loves joking to cheer up the mood. The woods were deep and we had to carry a map of the area so that we didn't get lost. After parking our car at the road near the hiking trail, we took our backpacks and started the journey. The plan was to hike to the big waterfall amidst the forest and then come back eventually. The waterfall was located right in the middle of the forest, so we had to walk a moderate amount of distance. I was feeling all refreshed as soon as the pure air touched my lungs. I have always been a fitness freak, so hiking is like meditation for me. Luckily, Alex shared the same interest, and this is why we fell for each other. Isn't the weather lovely? Not more than you. Oh, stop it. Don't be so cheesy. Look there. As I followed the direction he pointed to, Alex tickled me in the waist and ran ahead of me like a 6-year-old. You know I'm faster than you. Then why are you standing so far? I ran to him and he started running ahead again. He was mocking me and I was laughing too while chasing him in those woods. Life is really fun with him. After a point, we got tired and stopped to take a few breaths. We can't lose our energy like this. The waterfall is still a few miles away. Come on, we have to get back before dark. Yeah. Like it was my idea to chase you. He caressed my cheek while smiling flirtatiously and we started to walk again. There were narrow trails scattered around the woods, and we had no idea which one ended where. The only thing we knew was that one wrong direction was enough to get us lost in these woods forever. After walking for 2 hours straight, when we reached near the waterfall, the sun was above our heads. The average height of the waterfall stood like a hidden world. I have been to many forest waterfalls before but don't know why this one felt like a dream. The stones covering the waterfalls were all covered in green moss. Even the small pond where the water dropped was green too. Wow! The water is so green. Yeah. Makes it look even more beautiful. I'm feeling hungry. Let's eat, shall we? Alex sat down on a big rock and started taking pictures on his phone while I unpacked our lunch. I brought chicken sandwiches, fruit salads and some chocolate pudding. I knew the long hike would make us hungry, so I brought enough for the two of us. I handed him the sandwich and started to eat some salad first. We were eating and enjoying the sound of the waterfall when another sound came to our attention. The waterfall wasn't that big, so the sound was quite mellow. With the reverberating water, there was a sound of soil. Like someone was digging the ground. The sound came from the end of a narrow trail on our left. What is that sound? Seems like we are not the only ones here. Doesn't it sound like digging? Let's check it out. But we should be heading back in some time. Yeah, we will, Corey. But don't you want to know the mystery behind this sound? I still regret not saying no. We left our belongings near that waterfall and started to follow that sound. After walking 2-3 minutes on that narrow trail, we reached a big tree. The sound was now clearer. As we peeked behind that tree, we saw a weird-looking man digging holes in the middle of the woods. He was wearing brown trousers and a tattered jacket. He wore black rubber gloves and was digging the soil with a rusty spade. He was sweating like hell due to the exertion of the work. But the hole he dug wasn't even a foot deep, so I wondered why he looked so tired. What the hell is he doing? Doesn't he look too tired to dig a hole that small? Exactly. I was thinking that too. The man suddenly looked in our direction and we hid behind the tree quite immediately. Alex whispered to me, "Do you think he saw us?" I was breathing heavily out of panic, so I didn't answer him and waited for the digging sound to start again. Everything remained silent for a few seconds. At that time, I could imagine the man staring at the big tree with his creepy eyes, hoping to see someone interfering in his mysterious business. But when the digging resumed again, we both exhaled a sigh of relief. I looked at Alex and said in a low voice, "I don't want to stay here anymore. Can we please leave?" "Yeah. Let's crouch down so he doesn't see us." We crawled the ground like a four-legged animal to avoid being seen by this weird man. After coming back to the waterfall, we started to pack our stuff when Alex said, "Can you hear that?" "I don't hear anything." Exactly. The digging sound has stopped. I wonder what he is doing now. Well, I don't. I am going back. You are most welcome to join me. Alex and I started to hike back, but as we wasted our time spying on this creepy guy, when we reached the car it got dark. We had to drive for an hour more to leave the woods and get on the highway. Thinking how scary it would be to drive amongst the wood, I felt extremely scared. Also, the sight of that man spooked me enough. We got inside our car and Alex started the engine. As the headlights hit the dark road ahead, a cold shiver ran down my spine. The creepy man with the spade was now standing on the road, blocking our way. He was looking at our car with a gaze full of nothing but hatred. But then he smiled most disturbingly and said, "What did you see?" His voice was squeaky and harsh at the same time. My hands were numb and Alex's face turned pale too. He replied in a fumbled voice, "What the? Did he follow us?" I asked you a question. What did you two see back there? Nothing, okay. We saw nothing, just you digging a stupid hole in the ground. Now move out of our way before we run over you. Hearing me threaten him, his eyes got even bigger with fury and he spat on our windshield. Are you insane? Why can't you just leave us alone? Because you guys didn't do the same to me. I can't let you leave. I am sorry. Or maybe I am not. Ha ha ha. Saying this, the man ran at us at full speed and smashed the windshield with his spade. With just one hard hit, the entire glass cracked. Start the car. Start the car, Alex. Alex turned on the engine and the man hit the windshield once again, making the glass shatter. I was covered in broken glass that resulted in cuts all over my skin, so was Alex. But he pressed the accelerator with all his strength and with a loud screech the car started. The man immediately jumped to the side of the road to save himself from getting run over. I swear if he didn't move, we would have run him over that night. As we drove away, he watched us while cursing in foul language. When we got onto the highway, we were shaking in fear. I started crying with this trauma and Alex was petrified too. We went straight to the nearby police station and reported this incident. The cops took pictures of our car for their report and told us to identify the spot where we saw that man digging. The next day, we all went to that same place, but the man was nowhere to be found. The cops searched the area with dogs and they barked at the ground where he was digging. The cops found a body of a young boy who was missing for a year. The boy had torture marks all over his body and signs of strangulations on his neck. It seemed like this man abducted the kid and tortured him for ransom. But his torture grew to such an extent that the boy eventually died. Being scared of the cops, he came deep into these woods to bury his body. He had to drag the body all this way, which is why he was panting while digging the hole that day. Alex and I have given proper information about his facial structures so the cops can catch this psycho murderer. I hope he gets arrested soon for what he did. Our neighbor, Mara. When I was 10, my mom got a new job, hence shifting to Wisconsin. My dad bought this house in the suburbs and the neighborhood seemed friendly until I met Mara. She happened to be our next-door neighbor, and my mom made friends with this woman pretty fast. She would come maybe twice a week, and they'd sit around the coffee table on our balcony and just talk. One day, I was on the balcony with them. I'm not sure why I was there, but knowing me, I was probably bored. So, we're sitting there, they're gossiping about who knows what when my mom got up to get some cake she had baked recently. I remained sitting at the table with Mara, and that's when my life changed forever. Mara was a spooky-looking woman. She was about 5'6", skinny, with long black hair, pearly white teeth and big yellow eyes. Her eye color was so unnatural that it was unsettling to retain eye contact with her for more than 3 seconds. We sat quietly when all of a sudden, she turned towards me. A creepy grin appeared on her face. Her bright red lipstick with bright white teeth made her look even scarier. She started to tilt her head slowly from left to right, almost like a puppet. And then she spoke in the voice of an 8-year-old girl. "You ready to go now?" I kid you not, hearing her voice change drastically with the disturbing body language combined. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Huh? What? You ready? While saying this, she pulled a black rose out of her purse. That's it, she just took the weird-looking rose out and held it there. Her bony fingers accompanied by long yellow nails dangled in the air as she held the rose towards me. That was the first time I saw a black rose. I started sweating in fear when my mom came with the cake. "Here you go, Mara. Try this. I baked it yesterday." Mara, almost as if someone pushed a button on remote control, switched back to her normal self, putting the black rose back into her purse without my mom noticing. I left the balcony creeped out, but I was tense, so I brushed it off quickly. I didn't know something way more vile waiting for me at night. My room is on the first floor, and my window is at a maybe 5 height. I was never an easily scared kid, but that night doesn't know why a weird feeling crowded my mind. I would turn in my bed constantly and look at the window after every 5 minutes. It was getting late and I started to doze off slowly. Before falling asleep, I decided to look into the window one last time. And there she was. Standing in the freaking window, Mara. Just standing, looking directly at me. The moonlight fell on her, illuminating the same grin I saw on her face in the morning. Her red lipstick was smudged and stained her white teeth. I was paralyzed with fear. I often imagined what I do in situations like these, and I always had an escape plan for any hypothetical I threw at myself. But now, when our psycho neighbor was staring at me through my window at 3 a.m., just smiling, I was motionless. My mouth got dry, I got goosebumps, and I swear I could feel my room temperature drop to minus. After being like this for a minute straight that felt like an eternity, I finally gathered the courage to get up. I started walking towards the door with trembling feet while sweating like a dog. As I kept moving, Mara's evil yellow eyes followed me in a slow but cringing motion. Slowly, 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 with the grin still there. Again, it was as if she were a puppet. I wanted to scream for my parents, but my voice somehow died that time. I raised my hand to grab the doorknob and froze. I froze because she moved. She lifted her skinny hand that held the same black rose. "I hope you're ready now." Hearing that same spine-chilling voice coming out of an adult woman, I was on my way to pee my pants. "Please. Just leave me alone." As soon as I said that, she smiled, disappeared, and an angry frown took place. She nodded her head from left to right, gesturing no. Then, she grabbed the window pane. But every move she made was so slow, so mechanical. She started charging the window with both of her hands, and I realized she is trying to get in. I was so horrified witnessing this scene that I forgot to react for a while. The window slid open and she shoved her head in from the gap. I quickly realized the impending doom and grabbed my door to get away from my room. But based on my luck, the doorknob was stuck. I was freaking, panting in fear, trying my best to unlock the door, but it didn't buzz. While Mara was halfway through and screaming in that freaking child voice, "You're coming with me. Hehehe. You will be my final one." Suddenly, the door slammed open and I ran out of my room, screaming for my dad. My dad, being a light sleeper, jumped out of his bed and screams back at me, "What the hell is going on?" All I could muster to say was, "Mara." Window. While Dad was putting his pants on, I ran back to my room, just to check if Mara was still there or not. You know, how in horror movies the person you saw is gone by the time witnesses come? Yeah, something similar happened, except I caught Mara leaving. There was a house some 100 yards away from mine, and it had one of those motion-activated lights. I saw the light turn on, and a glimpse of Mara disappearing behind that house. By the time Dad came in, she was nowhere to be seen. After much talking, he decided that it was just a nightmare and told me to call him only if someone physically comes into my room. "You and your imagination," he said, walking away. Needless to say, I got exactly 0 hours of sleep that night. The next morning, I woke up and found cop cars standing in front of Mara's house. People in our neighborhood gathered around her house. I walked outside and saw 2 paramedics stuffed talking out something in stretchers that were wrapped inside black plastic bags. Not understanding a thing and also not being able to spot Mara anywhere in that chaos, I stood there with a blank face. My mom and dad were talking to a cop, and when they saw me, they immediately came towards me. My mom was sobbing and my dad looked very serious. He sat me down and said, "Mara has been arrested this morning." After receiving a complaint from a woman in the adjacent neighborhood, the cops came for a routine check and found everything that they never expected from this woman. It is said that she was involved in witchcraft. The cops have found 4 dead bodies of kids aged from 6 to 9 years, buried in her backyard. With every corpse, she also buried a black rose. It seemed like she was running a satanic ritual for which she sacrificed these innocent lives. My mom hugged me in tears, and my dad apologized for not believing me last night. I could see the pain and trauma in my parents' eyes. They were thankful to God that I managed to survive. There is no doubt that I was her chosen 10-year-old who would have completed her ritual. That's why she said I was the final one, and that black rose symbolized death. Till today, I wake up at night covered in sweat with the fear that Mara is standing near my bed, tilting her head to the left, with the same evil grin and saying, "You're coming with me." Hehehe. The hunt begins. Last year my friend Dorothy and I went camping in the woods. Both of us loved exploring nature. We drove to the nearest hiking trail in my old, blue truck and parked it under a big oak tree. We planned to camp the night in those woods and then hike back to our car and drive home. Isn't it wonderful here? Yeah. The sun rays feel so great. Even though the woods were deep and filled with tall trees whose tops can be barely seen, the sunlights reach the ground quite well. It must have been 10-12 minutes when we heard a loud gunshot. I grew up in the countryside, hence I could guess it was the sound of a hunting rifle. What was that? Someone's hunting in these woods, I guess. Dorothy and I stopped to look around. We were expecting to see the one who was responsible for the gunshot, but there was no one. We didn't hear any footsteps, so ignoring this matter, we started to walk again. This small incident didn't startle me cause, like I said, it wasn't our first time camping in the woods. The woods were becoming denser with passing time, so we thought to find a common ground and settle for the night. After walking for half an hour more, we came near a 2-way. 2 small trails headed into the woods, one on the left, the other on the right. I was discussing which path should we take when we heard the crunching sounds of dry leaves. Someone is coming here. Let's wait and see. Maybe we can ask that person for direction. Okay. We too kept staring at the hiking trails confusingly. But we didn't have to wait long. A man came out from the right hiking trail holding a big hunting rifle in one hand and a dead wild boar in the other. Dorothy said in a low voice, "Now we know who shot what." The man didn't notice us first as he was walking while keeping his head down. But when he lifted his head and saw us standing in the middle of the jungle, he got shocked. He stopped and stared at us for a while. We stood there like before waiting for him to walk up to us. Once he came in front of me, I was finally able to see his face. He had messy hair that hadn't been combed in a long time. A foul body odor was coming from him that made the air around us heavy in a second. Fresh blood was splattered all over his trousers from that dead boar. He smiled, flashing his dirty, yellow teeth, and licked his rough, black lips without breaking eye contact with me. That very moment, a voice inside my head whispered, "This guy is bad news." But without getting freaked out, I tried to handle the situation as calmly as possible. "Hello. Can you tell us which way should we take?" "That depends on how deep you want to go." Ha ha ha. Dorothy and I exchanged look, understanding the dirty pun in his joke. "Anyways, never mind. We will find our way." We walked past him being completely pissed off, but the man just stood there holding that same filthy smile. I even turned back to see if he was following us, but he didn't move an inch from the previous spot, standing tall and watching us walk away. After some time, we finally found the spot to camp. It was a small barren patch of land amidst woods. Dorothy got busy putting up the tent while I sat down to make a fire. As the night fell, the ambience of the woods started to change drastically. Crickets were chirping from every bush. The echoing howl of coyotes made the environment chilling. I barbecued a whole chicken, and Dorothy took out beers. After a long walk and a bizarre encounter with a creepy stranger, my mind was too tired to enjoy the true camping vibe. "Are you still thinking about that guy?" "Yeah. What a weird dude." "Don't worry, he is probably not used to seeing two girls hiking in the woods." "I don't think he is used to seeing any girls at all. Bloody jerk." But somehow, I managed to let this matter go from my mind and started drinking myself to sleep. We laughed and cherished the nightlife in the woods for some more hours, then decided to go to sleep. The plan was to wake up early and hike back, hence we needed to restore our energy. I don't exactly remember the time, but I woke up hearing some scratching noises. I was drunk, so at first, I ignored it and tried to sleep, but suddenly my eyes went to the end of my feet. The entrance of the tent was closed with a zipper, and I could spot a zipper getting pulled slowly. Someone was unzipping our tent from the outside. I got up immediately in fear and woke up Dorothy. "Dorothy, there's someone outside our tent." "What?" Before we know it, a familiar foul smell choked my nostrils, and that same man from the morning slowly peeked his head inside our tent. I will never be able to forget this scene. There was something in his eyes that made me feel disgusting. He didn't say anything, just watched us and smiled. He didn't even get to just remain there. We were so shocked and spellbound that for a moment none of us made a single move. The man then let out a spine-chilling laugh and said, "Ha ha ha ha. Girls like you shouldn't be in these woods at night." "What? What do you want? Do you want money? Just take our bags and leave. Or, you'll be in huge trouble." "I will be in trouble? Ha 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 ha. You girls are funny. Who are you going to call? The cops?" "I highly doubt it." Saying this, he suddenly grabbed my leg and started to pull me out of the tent. I screamed at the top of my lungs for help, but except Dorothy, no one heard them. Dorothy grabbed my hand trying to pull me back, but the man had enormous strength, both of us combined. He pulled me out of the tent and then kicked me in the stomach with his boots while I lay frozen on the muddy ground. His one kick blurred my vision as I could barely take the pain. I then heard him going for Dorothy and she screamed just like me. I remembered. I have kept a hunting knife under my pillow just in case. I yelled, gathering all my strength, "Dorothy! My knife, under my pillow. Use it. Use it." The man didn't expect us to carry any kind of weapon, so before he could prepare himself for a counterattack, I heard Dorothy let out a vengeful scream followed by another excruciating scream from that man. He fell on his back holding his face, and Dorothy came out of the tent. She helped me get up, and I saw she had stabbed that freak in the eye with my hunting knife. The man was sobbing in pain and cursing us at the same time. Taking advantage of his downfall, we grabbed our bags and started to run in our pajamas. But the man didn't stop there. He too got up and, growling in pain, took out that knife from his eye. Dorothy and I watched him pull out an entire hunting knife from his eye, dripping blood like a fountain. "You two skinny bitches! You think you can defeat me? I will cut your skin and hang them dry. I will hunt you down like the wild boars in these woods." We ran for our lives. But the psycho chased us, bleeding from an eye yet holding the knife in his hand. We didn't stop, didn't look back, just ran and ran. When we finally reached the truck, we immediately hopped in. I closed the driver's side door and the man came rushing at me at full speed trying to get in, but I didn't give him a single chance. Filled with anger and hatred, he walked to the front of our truck and peed on the bonnet while laughing like a crazy lunatic. Ha 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 ha. I wanted to run him over with my truck, but as soon as I started the engine he stepped back and said, "Be careful. Girls like you don't get lucky every time." Ha 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 ha. And disappeared into the woods. We have filed a complaint about this guy, but I don't think the cops will find him. I just hope no other girl ever comes across as such a devil. Like he said, not everyone gets lucky.